Thank you so much for choosing to come into the education room. It's really amazing to be surrounded by people working in this sector. My name's Emma Treadgold. I'm from Ku-ring-gai Council, and my background a lot of sustainability people come from communications, funnily enough. So my background is in sustainability and communications, so very much all about educating and empowering. So I'll start off just by telling you a bit about Ku-ring-gai, just so you, I know we're from all over the place here, so this just gives you an idea of who I'm engaging. So we've got about 124,000 residents in Ku-ring-gai, most of them over 40, 46% parents with children, so that tells you a bit about the tone of our education programs, 52 schools and 160 daycares. So education really is a big opportunity for us. That's public and private schools and preschools. So we don't deal with preschools because a lot of them are private, and daycare centres. We've got another team that does that. So the program I'm going to talk about today is primarily primary school. So we're on the upper North Shore of Sydney. If anyone's been to Ku-ring-gai, if you love hiking, camping, kayaking, it's a bit of a paradise up there. So most of our community are, have bushland on their doorstep, or it's very close to them. So that can be, for some people, it's a blessing. For some people, it's harder work to get them to embrace the nature at their back door. So obviously a lot of endangered species and plant species, so for us, keeping our waste out of those areas is very important as well. So to put it in context, I'm going to talk about a little snapshot program today of what we do to educate some of our students about waste diversion. And it sits within our Smart Schools program. So we've got a whole lot of programs that sit under sustainability, energy smart units. This is one of them. This is 3 years old, so we managed to get ourselves an education officer, which was long overdue with that many schools in our area. So she has worked very, very hard, the whole team's worked very hard to bring all these programs to life. So the program I'm going to talk about today is very specific, but you can see here we do everything from poetry competitions to gardening and composting and looking at our fauna. Fauna is another really big part of what we do. So what is Why Waste It? Now, there'll be some people in the room that remember precious plastic. It's still very much around, from what I can tell. This is the first project I found when I was looking for ideas around how we could present the circular economy and recycling plastic to our students. And what precious plastic is it's a fantastic program that was started in the Netherlands about 2012, and at its core was basically trying to put that entrepreneurial focus onto plastic reuse. So for people that were in regional towns or trying to create education programs, they could take local plastics and they could actually create this mini machine. So it shreds, it extrudes, and it moulds plastics. So that was my first stop. We'll get the kids doing STEM and they can build their own machine. Well, that was a little bit reaching a bit far. I think we needed really a partner that could help us do that. So we went to some universities. It was probably about 5 years of going back and forth. And if anyone knows, in council, you do really have to be very persistent if you want to see programs happen. And so in 2023, so the program, as I said, this particular program is very new, it's only 2 years old, but we came across Defy Design, and they're an industrial designer group in Sydney. They also do education workshops. So for them, the education aspect was always also quite new for them. So it has been a journey together. And they do all sorts of things. So there's many more of these organisations around now than there was back when I was looking at precious plastic, which is amazing. I think we've come a long way in only 5 years. And they turn plastics into all sorts of things. And so it was with them that we hatched this idea. First of all, obviously we did all the discussions and surveying and talking to our schools and our teachers to make sure that a project of this kind was actually going to help them, because obviously coming up with a project, then telling people that they have to take it on is not a very good way to engage with your community. So teachers told us that they didn't want us to come in and present information that they could do themselves. They wanted us to extend it beyond the classroom, give the kids a real insight into something that maybe they would never otherwise have the opportunity to see. And as we know, young minds love tech and getting their hands in there and finding out about how cool things are made. So I'll pedal back a bit and I'll just show you here, this is how we actually run our workshops. So the way this program works is that, as I said, 52 schools, we're in the pilot phase of this program. So who gets to have the workshop? It's not cheap to run, and I can answer in more detail later on if anyone's interested in knowing the figures. So it is a pilot program. We're lucky at Ku-ring-gai Council we have an environmental levy, so that supports a lot of what I do, and that allows us to be a little bit of a guinea pig in the council world. We can try out some programs, we can see if they work, and then we share everything. So we share all our frameworks, our website wireframes, anything anyone wants from another council, we're pretty happy to share it. So the process here was to develop an expression of interest. Now, obviously, not all those 52 schools are on board with sustainability. As we know, a lot of public schools, they don't get recycling bins as a given, they have to purchase those, which is quite shocking when you first find out about that. So we don't discriminate, it's open to public and private, but we do look for schools that have a commitment, so they have a teacher or classrooms that have a commitment to waste recycling. They might have an environment club, they're teaching, they have recycling bins, they're teaching about circular economy. Because otherwise, if we come in, it's a little bit of a waste of our time if the kids don't really have that background knowledge. After the workshop, they can't continue that learning. So we picked 2 schools at a time. So we've only run 2 sessions, but we're already looking at engaging 400 plus kids through the workshops we've already done. So those 2 schools are selected and they're taken through pre-workshop engagement. So our education officer does some measurement, so looking at, what's the current situation at the school, how much do the kids know, so that gives us a measure for success once we've gone through the workshops. And they're given some activities to do with their kids prior to the workshop. Sometimes they're not always done, depending on the teacher's engagement, so that's something we need to work on. We then move into the hands-on workshops. So in the lead up to these workshops, which are run for about 3/4 of a day, obviously the school day, what we actually do is we ask the kids to collect plastics from home. So this is the real differentiating factor. A lot of manufacturers or recyclers that we spoke to, and they tended to be the smaller ones, wanted to use their own waste plastics to create us an item and then give it to us. And we said, well, it's not really what we're trying to do. We really want that education factor. And so Defy Design was actually quite unique in that they were willing to take our plastics and create a recycled product, which we could then show the whole life cycle to the kids. So I'll talk a bit more about how we set that up. But basically, we ask the kids to collect the plastics. They go out to Defy Design. They're shredded, moulded into a custom mould that we had made, and they're made into classroom rulers. So we hope, and it's it seems like an easy thing, every step of that has been very, very difficult. We didn't want to produce key rings and fiddle toys and things that were just going to go in a drawer or be thrown out. We really wanted, while it's not a total closed loop, we don't know where those rulers are going to go, they're going to be used for a lot longer than other things. So that gives you a really rough idea. Obviously, we followed up with the teacher afterwards and surveyed that way. So measurement, I could do a whole other talk just on how we measure the success of these programs. But that's very, very important. So anyone doing education, if you want to sell your program and get funding, you have to measure. So that's all in there. Again, happy to share any of the detail on that. So I'll go back a little bit here because I think for those that are really interested in the nuts and bolts of how we're doing this just gives you a good idea of how do we find someone to create a mould for us? Where do we store the mould? All these sorts of things. So This is a huge learning curve for me as well, trying to find someone that could do this. So Defy Design gave us a few options, as I said, for fiddle toys and key rings and dog bowls and all sorts of stuff. And we said we want something that can be used at the school. The kids can be proud of it, they can use it day to day. We wanted to write on it how much plastic had been removed from landfill by creating that ruler. It's made by their plastics that they brought into the school. So this is our mould. It's much bigger than it looks. It sits out at Botany, which is an industrial area in Sydney, and that's where it stays, in Defy Design's workshop. Now, Defy Design, we've got an MOU with them. They're allowed to use the mould for any education endeavours that they do. Whoever wants to produce a classroom ruler with their plastics, go for it. Particularly other councils. So we've got one other council in Sydney that has just recently started using the mould, so they get that for free. They then have to pay, obviously, to have the workshops done at their school. So that's a big future plan for us, is to use the privilege that we have with the funding to then share it with other councils. So these are the plastics that we collect. Don't ask me what the recycling number is, but there's a few numbers that we told kids they had to collect, which is another awesome way to make them learn, scrabbling through the recycling bins. The parents loved it. So we took these out to Defy Design. Then they do all their wonderful stuff with shredding and moulding it down. And these are the rulers that we produce. So amazingly, the colours are fantastic because it's shampoo bottles and all sorts of awesome stuff. And they have the school logo printed, and they've got the, how much grams of plastic saved. So that gives you a really good snapshot. There's some great photos. Ooh, not pointing in the right direction. These are just a few shots of what we do at the actual workshop. This is very much a work in progress, but I do think that rather than waiting till the program's gone for 10 years and you share all the successes, we need to be doing this stuff now. So that's why we're sharing it now. It's not perfect, but it's having some really great impacts that we can see. And being in a relatively small area with this many schools, we're a bit spoilt in terms of being able to test a lot of these. So I'm just keeping an eye on time. I'm just going to show you a short little video. Let's see if I'm as lucky as everyone else. This is one of our workshops in action.
This is a partnership with Ku-ring-gai Council and our school, and they've brought Defy to us to teach us all about recycling.
At Defy Design, they have a special way of taking all that plastic and turning it into new products, and that's what they've done with all your plastic. So you're going to find out today what Sam has done with all your plastic and how it's been made into new products. So let's welcome Sam.
Showing the kids how they shred the plastic. This is their favourite part.
Believe in protecting our environment and also in being a sustainable community. So this helps us with educating the children, and hopefully they take some of this information home and that they are a champion for sustainability in their own homes in the local area.
So little snapshot, sorry again, that was not the best quality video, but gives you a sense of what we're trying to do in these sessions. And the beautiful thing that comes out of these sessions is how excited the teachers get. So as we know, teachers are so time poor. I'm married to a teacher. If they're not doing reports or lesson plans or, they live and breathe teaching. So our biggest aim with this was to create a program that was actually going to help them, not give them more work to do. So this fits in very well with science and STEM curriculum, which is really, really important for anything that we're doing. So just quickly, as I said, measuring success, program's very young, 2 years old. We've done 4 workshops, 480 students, so we're doing multiple classes over those days. 400 kilos of plastic waste. Now, I'm under no illusion that this is going to save the plastic crisis, but that's not the aim of this program. It's to set a spark in the kids, and I think, Costa talked a bit about this morning. It's getting them young. A lot of them are amazingly well informed about this stuff, and they love tinkering and making and having that impression that, oh gosh, maybe I could mince up plastics and come up with some amazing solution when I'm older. So that's what we're trying to do, and the teachers are really responding to that. So future plans, as I said, very, very expensive program to run. So we would still heavily subsidise this program, but now moving on, looking at charging an incursion fee. For those that have kids, incursions can cost anything from $25 to $50. They're not cheap. I'm thinking, $10, $15 per child. That will have to be thought about in terms of how we then, engage the schools around that. But that's one thing we're looking at. As I said, sharing the resources with other councils. If anyone's in Sydney and they want to use a classroom ruler mould, you are very welcome. And adapting and growing, and this conference demonstrates that. I think that we are all driven to see change in this sector, and this is just one little slice of something that we're doing to help that. And there we go. Thank you very much.